Ciao a tutti, oggi è una diretta particolare per noi perché oltre a Vincenzo Giannone, che conoscete molto bene, c'è anche un ospite speciale, un attivista georgiano, filo-europeista, Giorgi. Hi Giorgi, thank you to be here. Allora,
Hi.
la diretta andrà in questo modo. Sostanzialmente ci sono 7 domande, 7 macrotemi che Vincenzo e Gheorghi affronteranno e al termine di ogni macrotema, che durerà circa 4-5 minuti, tradurrò quello che ha detto Gheorghi e quello che ha detto Vincenzo, e se avete qualsiasi tipo di commento potete farlo e tradurrò direttamente io dall'italiano all'inglese o Vincenzo. So we can start with the first question, with the first topic.
Absolutely. First of all, Giorgi, welcome here. We are based in Messina, which is the city in which I studied, which I start to also shape my political background. We are good friends since 2017. 2018 was in Ukraine, right?
Ukraine, yeah.
It's kind of let's say, we have a similar situation also in your country, and we noticed like last month that there were some trouble happen in the capital, Tbilisi. What's happening with the government in Georgia now? What is the role of the Russia in the last elections?
So, hello, ciao Vincenzo, Carlo. Thank you very much for the invitation and for having me here. It's a great opportunity to speak up about the current situation in Georgia and to share with our great partners and friends and supporters in Italy. I'm sure that there's a lot of common and similarities, and yes, that was a great time, the meetings. And once Erasmus builds the friendship, so there is more good things to happen, and this is also the way to go. The situation, what is happening currently in Georgia, that it's quite complex, not easy, but let's cover that in a way that everyone can get a clue more or less what is happening, that how to defend fragile democracies in countries, and why we need to be actively engaged in political and civic and political life in general. So it started actually not last month, I would say that quite far away, but let's say 1 year ago, there was elections, 26th of October, where the government, current, let's say, so-called government decided to, let's say, rig the elections. And it was by all international organizations, observed by the local monitoring missions and all the internationals. So it was kind of criticized because there was not free, fair elections. And based on that people start protesting. And people start protest already 320 days in streets of Georgia, in capital cities and in many other cities. However, that the biggest, let's say, demonstration and protest was raised after the 28th of November last year, when the so-called Prime Minister, Mr. Gobachidze, announced that they are halting all the negotiations and all the integration process of Georgia is a EU integration process as a candidate member state. Yeah. So, and over 200,000 of people flooded to the street. Was the big demonstrations, which was followed by the violent crackdowns by the special forces, policies, and over 300 people was tortured, beaten, and detained illegally, unjustified, and this all the recorded and all the sent to our international partners and so on. However, the situation, how it's developed, and since that, the people are resisting, people are defending their rights to live in the democratic, free, independent country, sovereign country, because as you already mentioned, that even though it seems that we have called the regime called the Georgian Dream, it is far away from the Georgian, which is later by the many European people was called by the Georgian nightmare, or which is can also have a Russian dream, because this is what they couldn't do in 2008 with the let's say interventions and with the aggression and the war. That's what they are now trying to do with the soft power and with the other let's say with the different playbooks, which is taken directly from the autocrat's playbook. Yes, trying to silence civil society, trying to silence free critical media, trying to let's say, criminalized all the peaceful protest. And what was happening was that was following, let's say, of the 1 year to make it this way. And in the last month, there was, not last month, actually, this month on the 4th of October, there was so-called elections, which was the majority of the opposition party was boycotting. As there was like a few parties which is participating, kind of called opposition, but they seem that they've been quite far away from the opposition. They've been only declared by their personal party interest. There was the former prime minister of the party, Zagaharia, and another banker, and people around him from the strong Georgia, which is trying to, let's say, as the opposition, but yeah, it's hard to say from the current then they've been pardoned. So I think that now current situation describing that all the major opposition leaders are beyond the bars in the jail, means they fabricated, let's say, cases, let's say, they're not appearing in the some commission of investigation, which was investigating in the cases of 2003, 2012. And the thing is that this case was about for how the war case investigation, and even some people who doesn't have any links to such kind of cases, even they've been jailed. So that makes how much absurd that now our current regime is in and trying to crack down all the possible ways to silence people's protest. And whom they are protesting against? Yeah, they are protesting against the IDPs. I mean, they are trying to silence IDPs who demand like a decent condition of living and to just advocate non-recognition and united of the Georgia, because you know that 20% of the Georgia is occupied by Russia. They are trying to silence people, students. They are because they are now trying to monitor and total control the education reforms in Georgia. I can elaborate it a little bit later. So they are trying to silence the economics or businesses, because some of the people recently got arrested. They are trying to silence political parties and to ban it. I can elaborate it later. Imagine that in the country, trying to pretend to be a democracy, and you want to ban the several major opposition parties entirely. They are trying to, let's say, kill and silence critical media. So there should be only one voice, one party parliament. Now, currently, we have one party parliament, yes? And some people from the so-called opposition, one party, which was formed not far away, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they've been very closely with the current so-called government. They decided to go back again. So it seems that they've been the Trojan's horse in the opposition.
It's like a Lukashenko scenario. Carlo, se puoi fare un riassunto, like a summary.
Allora, sostanzialmente all'inizio Vincenzo parla della sua esperienza in Erasmus Plus e anche di quella di Giorgi, e poi successivamente chiede cosa sta succedendo in Georgia e qual è stato il ruolo della Russia nelle ultime elezioni. E Giorgi ci ha ringraziato per l'invito e anche per poter spiegare in questo momento quella situazione. La situazione è un po' degenerata da tempo, da diversi mesi, e ci sono massicce proteste, specialmente oltre 200.000 persone sono scese in piazza perché c'è stato un lungo allontanamento della Georgia, dall'avvicinamento all'Unione Europea, dallo status di candidato all'Unione Europea, a un avvicinamento nei confronti della Russia. Manifestazioni con centinaia di migliaia di persone, centinaia di persone sono state torturate, picchiate e tenute illegalmente. Questo è successo dopo appunto un'esplosione di proteste e di violenza. C'è stata con l'avvicinamento della Georgia e della Russia l'allontanamento della Georgia da, diciamo, paese col candidato o con l'intenzione di entrare nell'Unione Europea. Poi Giorgi denuncia quelle che sono le azioni di soft power e di ingerenza russa. Denuncia quello che è uno stato di attacco alla libertà di stampa e di anche venir meno di qualsiasi stato di diritto, quindi anche massicci arresti legali. E inoltre parla anche di una crisi del pluralismo politico e democratico, quindi una difficoltà da parte dei partiti dell'opposizione di avere una vita normale come si ha nei paesi, diciamo, democratici e liberali dell'Occidente. E sostanzialmente questo, non so se vi posso aggiungere qualcosa, ma
sì, sostanzialmente è questo, anche il fatto che ormai in Parlamento c'è solo un partito.
Esatto.
Che tra l'altro era anche molto vicino agli attuali governanti. Giorgi, we saw also that during the protests there were like ruthless aggression by the police. And this reminds me basically Maidan in 2014 in Ukraine, when there were like the special forces beating civilians or demonstrators on the streets. How far we are from this scenario? It's something similar.
So yeah, many people can make a parallels, but what I can say is that for last 320 days and more, that for 1 year, so almost the people are peacefully protesting and demanding that to pretend, let's say, to defend the 78 article, which is in our constitution. So about 78 article, it says in Georgia that all the state institutions have to do all the capable mechanisms and to ensure and to support Georgia's Euro-Atlantic integration. So that means that what they announced on 28th of November, that was fully anti-constitutional. This is the one thing. And after all, they adopted series of the different laws, like a foreign agent law, like laws against peaceful assemblies to repress, and all different series of the laws, which was targeting the civil society to silence, to announce them as labeled as the foreign agents and serving the foreign power. And how can you imagine that organization being working and supporting closely, like Erasmus projects, yes, or other organization who is promoting the European education. Organization like us, who've been sending thousands of students and youth for a broader, inviting them to Georgia for exchange projects or to exchange their ideas, educational purposes. And there was many projects, yes, not only about this, but about infrastructure, about let's say education, about reforms, judiciary system, and many others. And now they want like a European money, but they don't want to follow the European reforms. Yeah, that's, I mean, if you want to become part of the family, and on the family there is some rules, yes, let's call it this way, or there is some union. If you play football has their own rules. You cannot play with rugby in the football, right? So unless you cannot succeed. So
things
the
to be extended to Mr. Orban and Mr. Erdogan, for example, just for saying.
Yes. So that's things that when we talk about European values, that's I think that Georgia been always trying to that way historically as one of the ancient European country. But I mean, Europe is our home, but the thing is about how to convert it in the people's choice, because majority of Georgia here is also saying that they support pro-European choice. All the recent polls and all the protests is showing. From the other side, what you can say is that recent elections you mentioned, on the local elections, yes? You know how, for example, imagine that in Tbilisi, for the mayor elections, there is nearly more or less 1 million, let's say, electoral vote. Can you guess how much the people support the current so-called mayor got? 250,000 people more or less voted. So that means that if you take it from the 1 million voters, it's around 21%, right? More or less who get, and those guys, former football player, quite famous actually in Italy, maybe Calazze, yeah?
Calazze, exactly.
Yeah, Calazze, but the thing is that unfortunately he doesn't follow the good way of good reputation what he could have in Italy, yes? He do everything against, because he wants a good life. He knows how the good life would be in Italy, but he doesn't want to have the same for the other Georgians. Yes, similar good lives, more or less. But from the other side, what I may say is that, that guy on the exit, let's say on the Central Election Commission, because people boycotted the election, he wrote 72%, because, manipulation of the numbers can be easily. So even so, you may get 20% of the people population, you decide to run and to decide for 100 of your citizens how to run. Yes, that kind of legitimacy they have, because they are isolated from non-recognition. There were several international resolutions and statements adopted by the Council of Europe. It was criticized by the Venice Commission. It was criticized by the, let's say, European Parliament, and several resolutions were adopted on that. it was by the non-recognition acts was lobbying and by Megobarry Act in the US. So the Senate House already passed. So, there is a series of no one in the civilized free world, democratic world recognizes this regime as a free and democratic, yes? What they recognize in the neighborhood, which you already mentioned, some colleagues, good friend of Orban and others, and also some other Asian countries or like African countries who they are proud to make a new, with all the respect. But if the country's choice is going toward Europe, the priorities, it should be European Union member state integration. Yeah, no, we cannot integrate much in Africa unless we have some bilateral agreements, however. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most challenging. If we say the similarities, yeah, I mean, there might be similarities, but main resistance thinks that what happened, that what's the difference with the Ukrainian case, I would say that here in Georgia, that people was trying to non-violent resistance movement to continue, even though that was with the dignity and was all the things what was happening. Because the one situation what I can say in Georgia is that now when they stayed, because it was mostly civil protest run, yes, because there was politicians engaged in the Ukrainian protests and many other, yeah. But in Georgia it's like a more civil protest, and they wanted to arrest different people. When they arrest, now currently Georgia has nearly 200 political prisoners, and out of them around 80 people are with the criminal liability. So, and they are even like young people of ages like 18, 19, 20 years old, who is the musicians, who is the actors, famous actors, who is the activists, even teachers, like a journalist, Ziama Globeli, who got Sakharov Prize recently for freedom of thoughts, yeah? And also other, let's say, people, and they are with criminal liability. Imagine that those people who've been like just pretty peacefully protesting, and there's around 100 people also who got for like administrative detentions during different this time. Yeah, if it takes with per capita, we have more political prisoners than Russia. If you want to, yeah, I mean, if you take per capita, yeah, so currently the situation in Georgia is getting worse and worse. That's why all the international solidarity and the advocacy on in Italy, that's very much crucial for us, and to support to isolation on the international level, because financial targeting sanctions, but I will talk later about how the Europe can play crucial role with standing the Georgian people and supporting in this fight against the autocratic regimes.
Thank you, Giorgi. Carlo, dacci un riassunto e poi la situazione.
Allora, sostanzialmente si parla del paragone con Maidan nel 2014, in cui le forze speciali hanno picchiato civili o manifestanti per le strade, e si chiede quanto sia distanti da quanto accaduto a Maidan ormai più di 10 anni fa. In più si dice che si parla dell'articolo 78 della Costituzione della Georgia. Infatti l'articolo 78 della Georgia stabilisce che la Georgia deve fare tutto quello che sia possibile per favorire un'integrazione con l'Unione Europea e con la NATO. E quindi Giorgi dice che l'annuncio fatto dal primo ministro filorusso il 28 novembre è stato completamente incostituzionale, perché si è allontanato da questa prospettiva di ingresso nell'Unione Europea e nella NATO. Successivamente ci sono state una serie di leggi adottate dal governo, una legge sugli agenti stranieri, una legge contro le assemblee pacifiche e altre misure destinate a reprimere la società civile e a mettere a tacere le organizzazioni indipendenti, con la scusa di parlare di agenti stranieri venduti o come se fossero delle spie. E inoltre questo ha portato delle difficoltà anche a progetti come quello di cui fanno parte Vincenzo e Giorgi, quindi Erasmus+, queste associazioni europee che promuovono l'integrazione tra studenti europei, e quindi anche che veniva fatto in Georgia, e anche studenti della Georgia facevano scambi culturali in giro per l'Europa.
Non solo studenti, anche giovani in generale, young people in general, not only students.
Ok. E poi successivamente per quello che è la deriva che ha preso la Georgia, Vincenzo ha paragonato all'Ungheria o addirittura alla Turchia di Erdogan, che la Georgia, dice Giorgi, ha sempre cercato di avvicinarsi a quelli che sono i valori europei, quindi sentono l'Europa come come qualcosa di vicino a loro, ma la vera questione è come riuscire a convincere e a sostenere tutto ciò, a far sì che la popolazione sostenga tutto ciò, perché la maggioranza dei georgiani oggi dice di essere pro Europa, ma le elezioni vedono un'altra realtà. Ci ha parlato del caso delle elezioni della capitale della Georgia, in cui per le elezioni del sindaco ci sono circa 1 milione di elettori. L'attuale sindaco ha ottenuto 250.000 voti, quindi soltanto il 21% votava per il sindaco, che tra l'altro è un Calazzo, un giocatore famoso che ha giocato in Italia. Successivamente, appunto, Giorgi sottolinea il fatto che purtroppo il 20% degli elettori può comunque essere influente, perché il 20% che ha eletto il sindaco prende le decisioni che influenzano la vita del 100% delle persone. E si parla, se non sbaglio, del fatto che ci sono state varie risoluzioni, varie dichiarazioni internazionali adottate dal Consiglio d'Europa per quanto riguarda lo Stato democratico della Georgia, mi sembra, no? Lo Stato della...
Sì, tra l'altro Giorgi dice che per capita ci sono più prigionieri politici in Georgia in questo momento che in Russia, che è un dato, diciamo, allarmante da questo punto di vista. Quindi stiamo parlando di persone che sono in carcere per motivi politici.
Esatto, sì,
Ok.
anche nella prima domanda lui aveva parlato di questo, di questo attacco allo Stato di diritto, alla libertà di stampa, eccetera. E poi lui dice che nel caso della Georgia si è cercato di portare avanti un movimento di resistenza non violento, e mentre in Ucraina dice che nel caso anche di Euromaidan era più una protesta politica, c'era anche una parte politica, in Georgia è più una protesta civile organizzata più dai cittadini, e il governo ha cercato di arrestare diverse persone. La Georgia conta oggi oltre 200 prigionieri politici, e di questi 80 rispondono proprio di reati, di un certo tipo di reati, e si tratta anche di giovanissimi tra i 18 e i 20 anni, musicisti, attori, giornalisti. Lui fa il caso di Ziana Probele, che ha ricevuto di recente il premio per la libertà di pensiero, e adesso sta accusando un processo dal punto di vista penale, e tutto questo per un contrasto da parte del governo, visto che la loro è una protesta pacifica.
Okay, Giorgi, we talk about what happened in the country, but I think that it's better like to tackle the topic of Russia and what Russia has done, not only with the vile occupation of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, so the 20% of your territory occupied by Russia, but generally speaking, if I say that Georgia has historically some problem with the Russia imperialism, I don't think I say something wrong, right?
Yeah, definitely. So the question is more about that how the Russian influence is currently and playing what roles in the situation of Georgia. Yeah. The thing is that in 2008, let's if tackle that from that point, that in 2008 the situation was that everyone was busy with Beijing Olympics champion, that Russia tried to use this busy times for the fast intervention of the Georgia, but with all our international friends and supporters of the European member states who came, like even currently that Poland, and from Poland, the Polish president Kaczynski, and the Baltic states president, Ukrainian president, and who've been all supporting, and also on international society, they've been all advocating to the ceasefire and to, let's say, stand with the solidarity of the Georgian sovereignty and democracy and independence. And at the time we managed to stop Russia. With, unfortunately there was loss of, in general, total of 20%. However, there was the very big signal. So after the Bucharest summit, as you know, NATO summit, which was actually should be key, let's say crucial for the, let's say, giving to Georgia for the member election plan. So beside of EU membership, Georgia was also striving to the NATO membership, and unfortunately, this is very sad to see that it is that currently no one is talking more about that, unfortunately. But one of the time there was a Georgia who was actually very much contributing to the Afghanistan mission and many other missions in jointly with the international communities, and in this regard to contribute to the joint defense on the Europe, which is actually now very much doing by our Ukrainian colleagues and friends, who is defending also European freedom. And I will, with the full solidarity and support with our Ukrainian friends and colleagues who is fighting and defending for our joint defense and security of the Europe, not only for Ukrainians. Then that's actually that everyone to understand that even the small country like Georgia in 2008, it was just test for the Putin and Putin's imperialism, because what he said, it was about one of the biggest geopolitical mistake was the collapse of the Soviet Union, and he's still trying to regain that influence. It not might be a new USSR, but still, with the powers of trying to intervene with the Moldovan elections, trying to have like a puppet government and proxy government in Georgia or in any other country. So trying to destabilize in the Caucasus region, yes, with Armenia and so on. With the situation, what was happened after 2012, Russian-made oligarch came to with the elections and with the democratic elections. This was actually, and Europe get a hope that, with after democratic elections that new people comes, but there was one big strategical mistake. How you believe that in the Europe probably that person who was Russian-made oligarch could come to Georgia with the European purposes? I mean, the person whoever you grow up, you bring their sentiments, you bring their nostalgia, you bring their connections, yes? If I imagine that if I met all my connections, all my career or my education is linked to the European, that which is also, I would say, that more in Western, and which I see that part, I can see also what with Russia is doing. It's also another debate topic, but still, those people who've been coming from this nature, it was hard to believe that making anything good and anything European to Georgia, but that one of the strategical mistake was about believing naively about the policies, what was they have been producing on the paper, on the policy. And even after 2020, they've been different round of negotiations, and they were trying to pretend that even 2020 there was not rigged elections. I would say that even 2020 there was even more rigged elections. There was more evidences, and there was even more tangible things which you could say that because this year there was electronic elections and they make it quite easily. Smartmatic, actually, this is the same company which is actually in US and many other countries. They are now under investigation. So
Right.
they did the same company electoral elections administration in Georgia. So what was there with Europe? They have to rethink and they have to readjust maybe their geopolitical thinking and analysis how to react with such situation, because as we see in the inside of Europe there is so many challenges and your fragile democracies. Imagine that if Georgia kind of becomes, unfortunately, it's very close to the second Belarus, yes, and I think that I wish all the free Belarus, but I think that one free Belarus is definitely good, and we don't need to second country to turn into Belarusians' ways. And this is also, let's say, Black Sea security, yeah, because Russia will not. I mean, this is all about geopolitical location. As we all know, that Georgia has a very strategic location, connecting bridge between Europe and Asia, and also this having this Anaklia port or Black Sea port, let's say, across the Batumi, Poti, and so on. I think that one importance that why it's important, like hybrid. Yeah, it's a direct war interventions in Ukraine, but in Georgia is a hybrid war, and they are trying to with the proxy governments that Russia will not try to play with this because they will use it to avoid the sanctions. So, they what they are doing, yes. They are trying to avoid all the sanctions and all the heavy result of these different packages of sanctions from the Europe, from the West, from the US, and so on. The second thing is that the Black Sea security context. That's why it's important that to be taken into consideration the democratic challenges in Georgia. That second thing is about how the other fragile democracies and civil societies see, because Georgian civil society is one of the most resilient. But only fighting with the bare hands and defending democracies against autocrats with non-violent, resilient actions, only this might be not enough. And because every day they are arresting civil activists, journalists, and people on the daily protest on the peaceful assemblies, yes, in Tbilisi. And for this need their proper reactions, that people have to feel that beyond the statement, beyond the resolutions, we need the financial targeted sanctions to push back Russian influence. Yes, because it's obvious that whatever happens is the playbook of the Kremlins, and this is not much doubt, and there is many things could be discussed, and I think the one podcast or interview wouldn't be enough.
Yeah, you touch also like the topic of the Russian propaganda, the hybrid war. Let's Carlo like sum up this intervention. Thank you very much, Giorgi.
Ok, quindi sostanzialmente in questo caso Vincenzo ha chiesto riguardo l'invasione del 2008 dell'Ossetia e riguardo anche quelli che sono stati i rapporti tra la Georgia e la Russia e quindi l'imperialismo russo, che ci sono stati diversi problemi. Giorgi dice che nel 2008, mentre tutti erano impegnati con le Olimpiadi di Pechino, la Russia cercava di approfittare di quel momento per un intervento militare in Georgia. Fortunatamente la risposta della comunità internazionale sarà abbastanza forte, specialmente di alcuni leader dell'Unione Europea e del presidente della Polonia, presidenti degli stati baltici e del presidente dell'Ucraina. E quindi si arrivò a chiedere un cessate il fuoco e si riuscì a difendere parzialmente la sovranità, la democrazia e l'indipendenza georgiana, ma la Russia comunque conquistò circa il 20% del territorio della Georgia. Tutto questo fu un segnale molto importante perché era avvenuto da poco il vertice di Bucarest, diciamo, l'incontro della NATO, che doveva essere appunto un momento cruciale per la Georgia. Successivamente, se non sbaglio qui, Giorgi stava parlando appunto della missione in Afghanistan e della missione di altre missioni con la comunità internazionale e poi fa un riferimento all'Ucraina in cui dice che naturalmente esprime solidarietà nei confronti dei colleghi e degli amici dell'Ucraina e ringrazia anche la risposta dell'Unione Europea che è stata abbastanza in parte forte per rispondere all'attacco russo in Ucraina, e poi spiega perché è importante che ci sia una comprensione di quello che è successo in Georgia nel 2008, perché è stato un altro banco di prova, oltre l'invasione dell'Ucraina nel 2022, l'invasione della Crimea nel 2014, anche l'invasione della Georgia nel 2008 è stato un altro banco di prova per Putin e per il suo imperialismo. Perché lui ha affermato che uno dei più grandi errori, uno dei più grandi momenti bui della storia diciamo della storia a cui lui ha partecipato è stato proprio il crollo dell'Unione Sovietica, e quindi c'è un tentativo di ricreare l'influenza sovietica con l'invasione della Georgia nel 2008, l'invasione della Crimea, oggi l'invasione dell'Ucraina. E inoltre si parla di quella che è un tentativo da parte dei russi di destabilizzazione nella regione del Caucaso e anche degli altri paesi limitrofi, tra cui anche l'Armenia, e la situazione parla anche di come si è arrivati a questa situazione in Georgia, che si è creata una determinata situazione dopo il 2012, in cui gli oligarchi russi sono arrivati al potere attraverso elezioni formalmente democratiche. L'Europa ha sperato che la situazione potesse cambiare con nuove persone. Se non sbaglio, lui qui parla, Vincenzo, di Ivan Civili.
Sì, parla anche del fatto che comunque il Cremlino ha usato il soft power, quindi i rubli, per condizionare la vita economica e politica del paese. Cioè, prima ti occupano e poi ti mettono i Lukashenko, i Yanukovych.
Esatto, infatti qua Giorgi dice che l'Europa ha fatto un grande errore perché ha assistito passivamente aspettava che cambiassero le cose in Georgia nonostante l'intervento organizzato da parte dell'oligarchia russa, e quindi sostanzialmente un errore da parte dell'Europa di troppo attendista, cioè di quasi troppo passiva, ecco, l'Unione Europea in questo caso. E poi anche qui ci fu parla del 2020. Le elezioni del 2020 sono state manipolate secondo lui, e cioè, quelle già da quel periodo erano state manipolate, soprattutto quelle del 2020 e quelle dopo il 2020. Parla di prove, di elementi concreti e anche del fatto che le elezioni si sono svolte in forma elettronica, e questo le rese più manipolabili, e probabilmente è stata una tattica apposita, una tattica furba e intelligente per renderle ancora più manipolabili. E infatti lui dice che la stessa società che gestisce i sistemi elettorali negli Stati Uniti è sotto inchiesta per quanto è successo alle elezioni della Georgia, e l'Europa secondo lui dovrebbe totalmente rivedere la propria visione geopolitica e agire di conseguenza visto quello che è successo. E appunto poi sottolinea nuovamente il fatto che questa azienda che ha gestito il sistema elettorale elettronico è sotto inchiesta, quindi a conferma di quello che diceva Giulio, perché Giulio ha chiesto se in caso, adesso vi faccio la domanda diretta, Giulio parlava se ci fossero dei brogli elettorali in Georgia. Beh, in questa risposta diciamo che penso che Giorgi abbia tolto ogni dubbio.
Abbiamo parlato anche del fatto, e questa sarà la prossima domanda, sul fatto che il Cremlino usa già da 20 anni la guerra ibrida in Georgia. We talk now about the fact that Kremlin, as you say, applied the handbook in Georgia for the first time, not only in Georgia, but in Georgia with good results. Also by using hybrid war, which is basically what we are facing from 2022 and even from 2014 here in Italy. As you know, in the past, we had the biggest communist party in the West, and more or less, and also with some justification, people are frankly anti-American a lot of time. So this was like the fertile, let's say, field for Russian propaganda. So what we assist now, for example, my friend, is that some people push to break the European Union, blaming NATO for everything, blaming European institutions that are seen as war seeker, not like the big pacifist organization that allowed at least Western Europe to live in peace for over 80 years. So I would like to, me, Carlo, and other people from ORA, we're really struggling in let understand people to not be that prone, because there are people that experience it, USSR, or be like a satellite of USSR. I would like to give you the floor for talking to these people, because of course, I think you are Georgian by generation in your family, so you know very well what happened with USSR and what is happening now with this with this war criminal, which is Vladimir Putin. So I would like to give you the floor and say to people and say something to people that are prone to Russian propaganda, which means European Union enlarged too much, or it's Putin was provoked by NATO and all these kind of things, all the stuff that we already know. But if you can say something to these people, it would be great, because it's what also Georgian is struggling for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you very much for bringing this topic to more detail, so I can summarize and continue with what I was saying with Russian propaganda and influence. Yeah, one thing that what was happening when we say something, there was labeled, for example, foreign agent law. You know that in Georgia they adopted that foreign agent law, and later, because this foreign agent law it was protested, they take it back, because it was well coordinated by the resistance, civil society, protest, and other political parties, medias. Rightly, critical media was giving the right information. That time propaganda lose. So when the propaganda is losing in Georgia, so they have make a step back. So later they try to push it more and to take with the new style of FARA. You know, FARA is similar to what is happening in US, but they took it from the without context. Because, for example, even FARA, if they don't target the civil society organization and others, so in Georgia they target directly civil society organization and critical media. Yeah, and when we say something, when we label it as a Russian, as a good, or as a bad, or as a West, it doesn't mean that if you say that something it's like a Western, it doesn't mean that 100% is good. Or if you say something Russian, it's 100% is bad. Yes. But should be critical thinking. The propaganda main tool is that they try to mix little truth to the so much lie. And to mix it, especially nowadays with the AI and technologies and tools, it's very much easier. Yes, you can even make the faces, the voices, and you can make so much fake news, troll bots, factories in Georgia. There's so much millions are spent on the sponsoring their fake news and making anti-Western propaganda from this way. But when you say this something, but just look, so why we don't want, for example, Georgia was part of USSR, yes? It was collapsed because there was fair heaven, because there was no human rights. There was no, let's say, decent living conditions. Everyone was forced to work, but actually everyone was equally poor. So
everybody has a job and everybody.
Let's be socially fair, equal, but everyone equally poor. Yeah, what's the purpose of having that? I mean, the thing is that when we call something American, or it doesn't mean that everything American is good or everything Chinese is bad. Yeah. Or different companies when it compares. Important is the critical thinking and making the logical framework. Yes. Then this is come from us, and we have to explain to the people bread and butter price is politics also, and how to easily comes, because we know that sometimes the oil is getting much more expensive and many other things. Politicians in the Europe and bureaucracy is taking so much and the reforms taking so long, but maybe it's because that we need to become more proactive. We need to be more engaged and become captain of your life. Decide what kind of country we want to live, what kind of justice system we want, what kind of education reforms. Do we want to be in politics, or politics is far away? Only people think that politics is only for politicians, but politics is the people who is, if you just open the door and you go to the street, you are already in politics, because what you are moving on the road, it was built based on some policies of environmental policies, that trees are there, or like hospitals and social packages. I mean, that's people have to understand. And this is what the Russian propaganda does, that they put one big, let's say, artificial enemy. In Georgia, it's like global war party. No one knows who is the global war party, as they never say. And later say, because global war party didn't work, because it's a fake, artificial, people didn't believe. There was different surveys. Later, what they said that it's a deep state. So then, because they was trying to match these narratives of the once or twice that Trump said about the things, but now they are against Trump. So what happened then? Georgia's government, so-called government, is against Trump. So what does it mean? Or they are now? I imagine the European side. So you said those people who to address in the Italy, yes? Imagine that those people who is, for example, so-called Georgian government, they are against anti-American, anti-Western, anti-European. So how is both bad? If for Europeans, America is bad, then it means the Georgian government is good. Yeah. So the thing is that what I can summarize things that, that was autocrats learn how to play democracies. What they needed in Russia in 12 years, because you remember the first in Russia was 2012 introduced this foreign agent law, and they was slowly moving that direction, dragging the silencing the critical media, civil society organization, taking different repressive laws and labeling even authors as agents, writers. In Georgia, the Georgian autocrats become so creative. They did everything in 1 year. But yes, I mean, the things that if they don't, and this is how Putin is testing now, and they do similar things in the Serbia, yeah? And when people explain about Serbia, that in Georgia is 10 times harder what is happening in Serbia and repressions. So that's why that, and I'm very much optimistic, but at the same time, we should be very much careful that where do we want to live in after 10, 15 years in Europe? Yes, because the war is just one away, but it doesn't mean that in Georgia, biggest propaganda works on the war. Yes, that imagine that they say that Europe are asking to open a second front war. But from the other side, actually, that this so-called Russian dream, and Russia is the one who is actually been fighting. From the other side, since the member states joined the European Union, we don't remember any member states have been engaged in the war, right? And this didn't happen for the last 70 years. This is the one. Second thing is that, challenging times, but economically, it's one of the most attractive. I mean, believe or not, but it's living better than any other European countries of outside of European Union. Yeah, I mean, I don't consider the Switzerland or any other few states, but majority of them, yes, of the Council of Europe member states. then Europeans have to ask, maybe it's problems in us. Yes, what kind of Europe we want to live, and what I have to engage in this regards, because there might come times that even these times should be kind of, we wish that the time to come, because every day we was in Georgia was thinking what could be worse happen, what can be worse, what could be next stupid decision by the government, but every day they are doing worse and worse. Every time they are repressing more and more. I mean, because when the financial fines for the blocking the streets, peaceful protests didn't work, they now starting to detain people with administrative. They still people, let's say, protest for 320 days. You know what they now starting doing? Even after second administrative detention, they will put people in prison for 1 year and imprisonment for the peaceful protest. Imagine, if you want to criticize anything in Georgia, it will become criminalized. You cannot actually do, or you have to do it in your home. But still, you cannot do it at your home to criticize, because people have been fined for the Facebook post. For the Facebook, imagine. Facebook comments was my friend was like detained.
And the thing, especially in Europe, there are these boot farm. What they use social media, it's great. You know, also the double standard and the cynical use of media. This is like the thing. They say, you know, not in this page, but in another page, we have been hosted, and we had to listen. Sorry for the French, my friends. A lot of craps on, I don't know, Baltics want to attack Russia. or Poland want to tame Kaliningrad, you know, and you are kind of, how can I react to that? How could even try to think to convince people? This is our problem. Carlo?
Ok, allora facciamo il riassunto anche di questa parte. Allora, sostanzialmente si parla del fatto che la Russia cerca di evitare le sanzioni, di aggirare le sanzioni imposte dall'Europa, dall'Occidente e dagli Stati Uniti. Il caso più eclatante, questo aggiungo io, non l'ha detto Giorgi, è del Kyrgyzstan. Se voi andate a guardarvi le esportazioni dall'Italia, dalla Germania, dalla Serbia, dall'Olanda al Kyrgyzstan sono più 200, più 300, più 400% all'inizio della guerra, dal 2022. E successivamente il secondo punto riguarda la sicurezza del Mar Nero, perché è così importante tenere gli occhi puntati su queste realtà, tra cui anche la Georgia, sul fatto che sono democrazie fragili, specialmente quei pochi paesi che non fanno parte né del NATO né dell'Unione Europea, in quella di mondo, di Europa. La società civile georgiana è tra le più resistenti, ma deve combattere sostanzialmente a mani nude e deve difendere la democrazia con la forza della resistenza non violenta contro però degli oligarchi autoritari e ben organizzati, e naturalmente che rispondono al potere politico russo. Poi sostanzialmente si parla di quello che è le accuse mosse nei confronti dell'Unione Europea e della NATO, di quella che spesso è una vera e propria propaganda nei confronti dell'Unione Europea e della NATO. Quindi vengono descritte sia l'Unione Europea che la NATO come organizzazioni che fomentano la guerra, contro la pace, eccetera, eccetera. Invece si sottolinea come l'Unione Europea sia riuscita a stabilire nel nostro continente una pace senza precedenti. Poi Vincenzo dice che io e lui stiamo lottando insieme a tanti altri, anche del partito a cui siamo iscritti a ora, contrastare questa narrativa della propaganda russa, e stiamo anche lottando per far capire che le persone che hanno avuto esperienza con la Russia o addirittura con l'Unione Sovietica e che hanno vissuto come paesi satelliti dell'Unione Sovietica, quindi del potere centrale del governo di Mosca, hanno delle esperienze, dei ricordi estremamente negativi, e questo deve essere una lezione per tutti noi. Quindi si sottolinea il fatto che Giorgi e i suoi familiari, i suoi amici, specialmente quelli più anziani, sanno bene come è stato vivere a stretto contatto con l'Unione Sovietica.
Tutti uguali ma tutti poveri, praticamente ha detto questo sostanzialmente.
E successivamente si parla di quella che è la propaganda di influenza russa, della legge sugli agenti stranieri che è stata approvata dalla Georgia, quindi in sostanza delle associazioni, delle organizzazioni internazionali pacifiche, tra cui si è citato anche Erasmus Plus, hanno difficoltà a agire in Georgia a seguito di questa legge, che è un modo per sostanzialmente avere il monopolio e respingere qualsiasi associazione non sotto il controllo del governo. diciamo che le proteste popolari e pacifiche sono molto difficili, perché i media sono sotto attacco, la libertà di stampa è sotto attacco, il pluralismo democratico è sotto attacco, sostanzialmente c'è un vero e proprio partito, quasi partito unico si può dire, per quella che è l'evoluzione della democrazia georgiana.
Puoi essere arrestato per un post su
E poi
Facebook.
esatto, alla fine Giorgi dice che sostanzialmente conosce amici che hanno avuto problemi addirittura a essere arrestati per un post su Facebook, o addirittura per dei commenti su Facebook, per far capire a che livello è in questo momento la repressione in Georgia. E quindi sostanzialmente questa è la difficoltà. Poi nell'ultima parte avete parlato della propaganda e delle fake news, della propaganda anti-occidentale, e che si spiega del perché perché è crollata l'Unione Sovietica. Quindi la Georgia faceva parte dell'Unione Sovietica, e l'Unione Sovietica è crollata perché non c'erano diritti umani, non c'era libertà, non c'erano condizioni di vita dignitose, erano tutti costretti a lavorare, ma alla fine tutti ugualmente poveri, come hai detto tu, socialmente uguali ma ugualmente poveri, e che sostanzialmente bisogna cercare di essere più attivi politicamente, bisogna cercare di essere più presenti poi sul dibattito pubblico, perché il caso della Georgia è un caso molto grave di quella che è l'ingerenza russa, e appunto che la propaganda russa sta creando sostanzialmente delle vere e proprie falsità, delle vere e proprie narrazioni completamente sconnesse dalla realtà anche in Georgia. Quindi sostanzialmente stiamo cercando di interpretare anche qui, no, tante la propaganda dei vari vannacci della Lega eccetera, parlano di non accettare diciamo quello che è un esito democratico, perché sono forze che non stanno bene all'Unione Europea. In realtà è tutto molto diverso, come ci racconta anche Giorgi dalla sua esperienza e dall'esperienza dei suoi amici e dei suoi familiari.
Okay, I think that we can go like slowly to the end. We are exposing ourselves as a politician because this is what we are, Carlo, right? We are doing politics. We are politicians. Even if I love the things Giorgi said, you stuck your nose out of your house, and it's already politics, you know. There's a lot of things outside the gut need a good politics, like to be ruled, to be managed, and so on. I want to tell you what we can do as party, but also as a social society, to support the Georgian opposition. What is the thing that we can proactively do for support people like you, colleagues that are, for example, in Erasmus Plus and our mutual friendship? What can we do? What our party and our civil society could do for Georgian people and for the democratic movement?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, all the support and international solidarity and mechanisms can be several. However, what I can say is that, not to make it subjective, but based on the objective needs, would be that every time when you start cooperation and working with a Georgian organization, make a background check. This is very important is beginning, especially in such situation, because nowadays many organizations may pretend as even civil society, like as a democratic or as like Europeans, but they are in general, they might be pro-government, because now currently if organization is widely doing different projects in Georgia and promoting that they got funds and so on, that means that they have no issues with the government, because other way any organization in Georgia now currently doing projects, they have issues with the government. If anyone will, because currently it's impossible for Georgian organization to get any type of funds. Because they are considered as the foreign agents. So always make a background checks, because even government now creating their own agencies to fund their government affiliated NGOs, gongos we call it. So make background checks. After, if you find out such a good organizations, and if you trust my intuition and my background and my experience and my advocacy, definitely they can contact me and I can give the connections with some good organizations working in Georgia, which is defending pro-European values and just freedom of speech expression and supporting the resistance of the civil activists in Georgia. This regards, yeah, support can be many ways. It can be like providing right information and advocacy and raising awareness what is happening in Georgia. From the other side, it can be also advocacy for the isolating. If you, I've said this kind of sayings that in Georgia that if you want to save the democracies, don't shake their hands, don't make negotiations with the dictators and autocrats. Because it never works good. They are just creating the pictures that they are kind of accepted in the normal democratic world, and this is not right. So, because I know that many Georgians have friends in Italy, I mean politicians, so-called governments, former football players and so on. So standing with them, shaking them, having some nice good times and promoting, they can use, informal meetings they can use for their propaganda. So, and there was such kind of situation, and I know that with the proper raising of noise and solidarity in Italy, many people had a problem, even on local level. So that this is the one thing. Isolation of the autocrats, supporting the pro-European, but this is not a rhetoric, but support the democracy, real values, and people who actually fight with bare hands for those values. It's not just saying the words. From the other side, foster more Erasmus exchanges with those organizations, even though those organizations can be, but as in participants, we still can send participants abroad. Yes, yeah, we have been doing that. Even despite of those challenges, for example, Proactive Group Georgia or other organizations, they still keep doing, and we send people abroad for different exchanges. Yeah, it will be probably hard to host them in Georgia. However, we are always glad to send them, support more exchanges this way. Try to find the kind of connections, the right sources of informations. From there, you can get a kind of update or briefs of the informations about what is happening on the grassroots level. Yes, that is very important. And to have like several sort of information and sources. After several background checks, you can still find those organizations in civil society, in the critical media, in the activist groups. So to exchange the practices, always important that some experiences, what is now happening, I hope that Italy will never need, but in case it could be important to have a resilient civil society who can actually keep any government accountable. And once Churchill says that if you like the government, so you might maybe ask later to go to the doctor, yes? If you start liking so much government. So that's the thing. Just stand, raise awareness, try to support, engage the Georgian civil society in different discussions, debates, conferences. They can advocate on grassroots level, help in the resilience programs, advocate for the Italian embassy in Georgia, that can make proactive actions to support and proper reactions to the anti-democratic actions from the government. Yeah, that all matters. Small actions can make a kind of good outcomes in total on the long run. It's hard. It's challenging times, but no one said that it was easy to push back the autocrats who comes with so much powers, with the billions, with the personal interest, and usually, yeah, this is the case. But joint, united, solidarity, Europe always standed. Europe always survived. I'm sure that Georgia, as one of the ancient European country, will survive, will win this fight till the end. But we need definitely, it will be faster and easier with the good friends like Italians, good friend of ours. And we have a lot of in common and similarities. There is so many Georgians living in Italy. So engage them, diaspora in different topics of conferences, of different mechanisms can be discussed later also in more like closed meetings or in the brainstorming meetings after.
I think we are open also, like we want to use this page also for Get Light, because in Italy, if it's something tiny little bit far from Trieste, well, people start either to lose interest or to embrace what is the Russian propaganda, and a lot of time also I listen young people say, hey, come on, but Ukraine is a sphere of influence of Russian or Moldova or Georgia or something like that. And probably if you ask, they don't know even where these countries are in the map. And this is really dangerous. Carlo?
Ok, allora sostanzialmente qui Vincenzo parte con la domanda e chiede cosa possiamo fare come società civile, come partito, come attivisti per offrire supporto alla società civile georgiana, e anche parla esplicitamente delle persone che fanno parte di associazioni europee, tra cui Erasmus+. Giorgi ci dice che per quanto riguarda il supporto ci sono alcune necessità e alcuni modi per poter aiutare la società civile georgiana. Diciamo che non è facile perché ci sono alcune associazioni georgiane che sembrano libere, ma in realtà sono sotto il controllo governativo, quindi prima cosa da fare, prima di avvicinarsi a un'associazione georgiana, una realtà georgiana, vedere se effettivamente sia un'associazione libera e non sotto la direttiva del governo, perché attualmente è difficile avere associazioni libere e indipendenti.
Facciamo infiltrare la propaganda. Così,
esatto.
Così facendo facciamo infiltrare la propaganda.
Quindi se ci sono delle associazioni in questo momento attive in Georgia, non vuol dire che siano effettivamente libere. Quindi prima cosa di stare molto attenti alle cosiddette anche ONG, quindi alle organizzazioni non governative che sono in realtà affiliate al governo. E dopo aver fatto questa sorta di analisi, bisogna innanzitutto sensibilizzare l'opinione pubblica su quello che sta succedendo in Georgia, ed è quello che stiamo cercando di fare oggi. Successivamente cercare anche di allontanarsi da quella che sono partiti o associazioni filorusse o comunque che sostengono il governo georgiano, quindi allontanarsi, contrastare pubblicamente e politicamente le realtà che nei fatti sono autoritarie e che stanno mettendo in serio rischio la democrazia della Georgia. Quindi evitare di legittimarle, dice Giorgi, per far sì che loro non si sentano legittimati dal mondo democratico e dal mondo occidentale. Successivamente parla di un'associazione, di un gruppo georgiano, Proactive Group Georgia, che stanno cercando di continuare
la sua organizzazione.
La sua organizzazione. Stanno continuando il loro lavoro, stanno cercando di continuare questo lavoro di scambio, quindi dalla Georgia all'estero, dall'estero alla Georgia, e cercano di offrire supporto alle persone che partecipano a questa associazione. Si cercano anche di aggiornare su quelle che sono le attività della società civile, le attività politiche, le attività che fanno appunto i componenti di questa associazione, e quindi si cerca anche di fare gruppo e di fare attivismo insieme. Importante appunto anche cercare di fare molte pressioni sull'ambasciata italiana in Georgia affinché possa avere un ruolo ancora più attivo e ancora più importante su quello che è in questo momento la situazione della Georgia.
E anche la diaspora georgiana in Italia, che è massiccia, quindi magari mettersi in contatto e anche dare solidarietà ai georgiani in Italia, indubbiamente questa è una gran cosa assolutamente che si potrebbe fare.
Ok, adesso un attimo gli faccio se aspetta, finisce e poi gli faccio leggere le due domande che hanno fatto Mauro e Giulio.
Okay, we can open to the comment, Carlo. There are the comments from our colleagues and not only.
Yes.
Carlo?
First comment, Mauro, about this information. What's the most effective proclaiming narrative today, and how would you debunk it?
Okay, should I
Yes.
respond? So okay. Currently, what is the most effective narrative works in Georgia is that if the current government, let's say so-called government, will be changed, the next day Russia will start the war in Georgia. This is their narrative. So the thing is that, and the people in Georgia who've seen 2008 and also in 90s the wars and all that, we have several over 200 years of so many wars with the neighbors and especially with Russia. So it could be kind of easily vulnerable and manipulative with the war. But only government and only people who is dragging Georgia towards the destabilization, towards a weakening security defense it's only GD party and Georgia, so-called Georgian nightmare, the Russian dream party. Yeah, because what they are doing, that they are trying to put Georgia alone in front of Russia. Because why in 2008 Georgia, we didn't, let's be honest, in 2008 the Georgia was saved and Russia didn't manage to occupy fully country, and not main goal of the 2008 was to change the regime, let's say to change the government at the time by the Russian regime. Yes, both former government, but former president of Saakashvili at that time, but because that president and government has strong ties and friends with like a Russian, let's say DC administration in Washington, said a strong ties with the European Union, those presidents fly and stand in front of Rustaveli in Tbilisi, and their planes during the 8 August was that days was in Tbilisi. That's why they couldn't, let's say, attack to Tbilisi. And that's how the time saved Georgia. Yes. Now imagine that Georgia, what's the Russian Dream Party, so-called in Georgia, doing? They are attacking all the Western politicians who are supporting and investing millions in Georgian education reforms, in the Americans who invested in the, let's say, Georgian healthcare sectors during the COVID and before and so on. Yes, I mean, those people, I mean, imagine that if you are developing countries, if the post-Soviet countries, we didn't have our budget was, let's say, just a few millions, yeah, that time, and now it's about 17 billion or more. So imagine how much increase was, and it was not happening in one day. That was about support and a lot of investment, developing programs and reforms. Now what they are doing, they are trying to dragging countries a poor, lower economics, because in the educational reforms, they are trying to take distance Georgia from the Western education. They want like attacking, all the Georgian Dream parties, they didn't go even closer to the occupation line border. Even when the foreigners come in, they go to, as they do anything and that's how it can be, let's say, seen. Okay, this is the one about war peace deal. This is actually this is a similar what many people in the Europe and many people in the other regions also try to make it, versus, they always put two words together with the, peace and freedom. Yeah, everyone want to peacefully living and in the freedom. And they say that if there will be wars, there will be no peace and destabilized, but you should be strong. And when you have a strong fence, strong back, that time, so Russia cannot, what do you think? Russia cannot attack to Estonia, or who is the 1,004,000 people, 400,000 people, or other Baltic states? But it will be very heavy cost for them. And imagine, you don't attack to the people of 1, 2 million, 3 million, and you attack Ukraine, which is the 40 million. Yes, this should be critical thinking and defend and follow not rhetorics, but truth. And what I can say to the Europeans, that Italians or others, not to fall into the propaganda and rhetorics and nice words and blah, blah, but go deeper, critically ask questions and debunk it yourself. Yeah, anything, what could be done? Yeah, critical thinking, fact checking, and narratives, which is good for what and what is actually how it interacts. That's how I think that it's the best way to debunk it. Education and media literacy could be one of the great way of doing that.
Yeah, I had to debunk a PhD in my city. Okay, so imagine like that we have a level of propaganda that got into university. So the situation in Italy on this case, it's really, we comment a lot of time with Carlo, with Mauro, the guy that asked you this question. It's really tough. Sometimes you have to go like to talk with people living and working in university and saying and replying this kind of rhetorics. Carlo?
Ok, aspetta, ok, delugo questa parte. Allora, sostanzialmente la narrazione, quindi Mauro sostanzialmente chiede qual è la disinformazione, la narrazione, la propaganda più forte in questo momento che arriva, più efficace, come smontarla. La narrazione più efficace è questa, che se il governo attuale venisse cambiato, il giorno successivo la Russia inizierebbe una guerra in Georgia. quindi questa paura nei confronti delle persone nel dire se vuoi cambiare questo governo che è filo russo, è un governo filo europeo, filo europeista, filo NATO, ci sarà una guerra. Il punto è che le persone hanno già visto la guerra nel 2008 e negli anni 90. Inoltre hanno vissuto oltre 200 anni di guerre con i vicini, soprattutto con la Russia. E le persone sono quindi facilmente vulnerabili e manipolabili perché hanno un ricordo molto vivo della guerra. Ma la responsabilità principale è del governo e di chi sta trascinando la Georgia verso questa destabilizzazione. Nel 2008 dice che la Georgia è stata salvata e la Russia riuscì a non occuparla completamente e occupò solo il 20%. L'obiettivo principale dell'invasione del 2008 era cambiare il regime, cambiare il governo in Georgia, e questo è un obiettivo sostenuto dal regime russo. Ma siccome diciamo grazie ai rapporti tra grazie all'intervento dell'Unione Europea e del mondo occidentale questo non è accaduto. Successivamente parla del fatto che negli anni sono stati investiti milioni di euro nelle riforme dell'istruzione georgiana, parlo da parte anche dei paesi occidentali, sia da parte della Georgia sia da parte dei paesi occidentali, e anche gli americani hanno investito nel settore sanitario della Georgia durante il Covid e anche prima. Successivamente parla dei paesi post-sovietici, e quindi dopo diciamo, la rottura con l'Unione Sovietica il loro bilancio nazionale era molto povero, invece adesso si parla di molto più di 17 miliardi di dollari. Quindi è stato un grande aumento, un grande aumento di, diciamo, di ricchezza, e questo è dovuto al lavoro, ai programmi di sviluppo, alle riforme, ci sono stati
investimenti
e investimenti. E ad oggi quello che sta succedendo con questa propaganda russa, con questo regime russo, con questo intervento russo, è quello di tentare nelle riforme educative e in altre riforme, da altri punti di vista, di allontanare la Georgia dall'istruzione occidentale, dal modello occidentale, e riportarla più povera, più ignorante, meno sviluppata, come era tanti anni fa, quando usciva dal periodo buio in cui era stata a stretto contatto con l'Unione Sovietica. E se vuoi aggiungere qualcosa, Vincenzo?
Sì, è il fatto sostanzialmente di fare, ecco, la prova del diavolo quando appunto sentiamo la propaganda. Cioè, questa propaganda chi avvantaggia? Avvantaggia noi o avvantaggia chi la propone? Per esempio, il caso sostanzialmente della Russia che attacca l'Ucraina, che ha 40 milioni di abitanti, il fatto che comunque, per esempio, i Baltici non potrebbero essere attaccati, no, se hanno attaccato una nazione come l'Ucraina, i Baltici possono essere attaccati perché numericamente sono quelli, ecco, cioè, quindi sostanzialmente di fare i conti, anche di attivare, diciamo, il pensiero critico e non escludere o avvalorare le cose a priori, ecco. Bene.
Domanda, last question.
Yeah.
One question from Giulio. I translated from Italian to English. Do you think there is electoral fraud? Are there international observers during the elections?
So, let's say the two cases. I mean, the thing that one was actually last 1 year ago, in let's say 26th of October, there was elections, and it was by Smartmatic company, was administrated by the let's say electronical. 90% was electronical counting, but people still was going on the polling stations, coloring things. And there was so much fear because it was visible whom to vote, because if you turn the paper on the second side, there was marker visible. So, and there was different other things. So that was not free. That was not fair, because there was not competitive in a way. No, competitive, I mean that before elections, there was so much different things which was against the elections. So like buying voters, let's say, using administrative resources, and etc. However, the one thing what I can say that about electoral fraud, that was Georgian. I was actually personally engaged in the election observation mission, and my organization and many others with the big election observation mission, which was United 30, Georgian Civil Society Organization, Transparency International separately, International Society for Free and Democratic Elections. I mean, there have been so many local and international observations, long-term, short-term. Unfortunately, everyone identified so many problems of this, which could say that fraud, it was not free and fair. However, what happened actually in October, when the major opposition and citizens boycotted the elections, even there, I couldn't say that it was free and fair elections there. Well, what was happened actually there was that they bring fake observations, and actually it seems that in Europe it's kind of good business, you know? The people are making that observation organizations for electoral votings, trainings, and so on. And in the less developing countries, or like, let's say, called like more autocracy tendencies countries, there is like they are inviting observation organizations which can be sold for Georgian audience. It can be also done, for example, in the case, for example, in Italy, there might be some people from US, if the citizen is US coming, or from other France. We had, for example, situations, the French observation mission was come to Georgia in 4th October local elections, and he was the same guy who was saying that Putin is a Democrat. The same person who was actually in Georgia, they by Georgian propaganda TVs that this was expert election observation mission who was, let's say, saying that Georgian election was a lot of everything was done greatly, and even French have to learn from the Georgia, yes, from the Georgian democracy, and even others. So you can easily, that's why important is the background checks, yes. Those observations missions are in the background. They said about fraud elections or African countries, or about Russian elections, about Belarusian elections. They said that everything went good. Probably those guys are corrupted. And
I would not surprise if some Italian were involved, because, sorry, I remember in 2014 where there was the fraud of the referendum in Lugansk and Donetsk. There were also people from Lega and Forza Italia, Italian parties, going there and validate 89% of suffrage for joining Russia, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I said that, I mean, fraud, you might have observation missions, but it's about truth. So one thing which actually propaganda cannot win against is the truth, because truth comes from the asking many questions. And when you ask in the Western society, in the European Union member states, in Italy, democracy is not a perfect form, but so far there is nothing better than democracy, unfortunately. Yeah? Maybe we could find something better. So liberalism might not be the best idea or other ideas, but still it should be truth-based, and it should be human-oriented, citizen-oriented. And I think that's the approaches should be taken. And if you ask so many questions that from which narratives it comes, then you can make a decision. Maybe some people will be leftist. Yeah, socialist, or some people could be more like a pro-centrist, or like a pro-liberal, and etc. I mean, pro-conservative, that's totally fine. But it shouldn't drag the country and shouldn't sacrifice to the autocracies. And that's important, because in the autocracies, you cannot have a private property, or you cannot have a security and feeling of the belonging, or you don't have a freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Imagine living in the countries that you are fined for the Facebook posts. For the countries, you cannot peacefully assemble and protest and criticize something on media or in your neighborhood, because someone will tell you make an NGO, you do promotion of European education, you empower people with fewer opportunities like us. For example, in Georgia, from my hometown, majority of them being beneficial from the rural regions, and you say that those guys are foreign agents because the government cannot provide the quality education. European Union can do in situation of Georgia with Erasmus or other programs. And it can be similar examples, parallels can be bring also in Italian case, yes. And when you come this exchanges, right? This was the Erasmus. So Sofia Corradi actually was Mama Erasmus. Yes, who was actually a big believer of the exchange. That was great. Says that if you go on Erasmus, you might not become always a better professional, but you become a better human. And that's the importance, because that's on the Erasmus or exchanges, you understanding different viewpoints, you become and you see different perspectives. You try to understand which could be a truth. And if you find out truths, so life is getting much easier, so more happier. and everyone is getting win-win situation. That's we should focus. Just be captain of your life. Be proactive.
That's great. I also dismantled some years ago like an umbrella organization financed by Lavrov, of a great organization that promoting solidarity, European values in Russia and in the Republic of Donetsk and Lugansk. And I was like I saw people, I had like a great, let's say, opinion when joining this crap, like, the guy, please, it's, as you said, it's critical thinking, you can call a thing yellow, but if it's blue, it's blue. There's nothing to say. There's no propaganda that could affect this matter of fact. Carlo, you want to sum up and then we set free Giorgi? Thank you very much, Giorgi.
Thank you very much, grazie.
Allora, sostanzialmente ha parlato appunto della domanda che ha fatto Giulio prima, cioè ci sono stati dei blocchi elettorali e ci sono degli osservatori internazionali durante le elezioni. Giulio parlava di quelli dell'ONU, mi sembra. Quindi l'elezione, lui parlava di quella avvenuta circa un anno fa, il 26 ottobre, è stata gestita da una società chiamata Smartmatic e circa il 90% dei voti è stato conteggiato elettronicamente, ma le persone andavano comunque ai seggi e sostanzialmente mettevano dei segni sulle schede, coloravano le schede, e lui parla di un voto soltanto all'apparenza segreto, perché se giravi la scheda una seconda volta il marcatore era visibile e c'erano diverse irregolarità. Quindi non si trattava di vere e proprie elezioni libere, perché la competizione elettorale non era una competizione elettorale reale. E inoltre prima delle elezioni, quindi durante la campagna elettorale, c'erano varie attività illecite, tra cui il comprare voti, usare risorse amministrative a favore di certi candidati e tuttavia Giorgi aggiunge una cosa riguardo la frode elettorale, che lui era personalmente coinvolto nell'organizzazione delle missioni di osservazione elettorale e quindi parla anche per esperienza personale e dice di aver identificato tantissimi problemi. Quindi le elezioni non erano né libere né corrette e lui in prima, personalmente ha potuto verificare ciò. Poi fa riferimento alle elezioni di ottobre, quando la maggior parte dell'opposizione cittadina le hanno boicottate le elezioni, e perché quelle non erano minimamente libere o giuste. E successivamente parla di quelle che sono delle vere e proprie osservazioni false, quindi la propaganda che si diffonde in Europa. Successivamente quindi fa riferimento a questo business riguardo organizzazione di osservazione elettorale, corsi di formazioni, eccetera. Quindi diciamo che parla di la creazione di organizzazioni di osservazioni elettorali e di questi controlli e di corsi di formazione venduti come imparziali e come se fossero imparziali, neutrali, indipendenti, ma in realtà non lo sono. Fa un esempio della Georgia, che hanno avuto una missione di osservazione francese per le elezioni locali il 4 ottobre e uno degli osservatori di queste elezioni sosteneva che Vladimir Putin fosse una persona democratica. La stessa persona.
È già questo.
Quindi sostanzialmente in Georgia hanno la missione di osservazione francese che per le elezioni locali del 4 ottobre e gli osservatori sostenevano che Putin fosse un democratico. Sempre le stesse persone sostenevano questa cosa, sono tornate in Georgia e hanno parlato, hanno riprodotto vere e proprie teorie di propaganda, dichiarando che le elezioni sono state ottime, che tutto è stato fatto correttamente e che la Francia dovrebbe imparare lezioni di democrazia dalla Georgia. Quindi situazioni simili sono verificate anche con altri osservatori. Quindi sostanzialmente ci sono degli osservatori che sono andati anche in Russia e anche in paesi africani a sostenere che le elezioni fossero avvenute regolarmente, ma in realtà erano delle agenzie, delle associazioni, degli osservatori sostanzialmente fake,
non imparziali.
Non erano imparziali. E appunto la testimonianza di Giorgi riguardo questi osservatori che sostenevano che Putin fosse un democratico ne sono la prova.
Voglio dire, ho anche nominato il fatto che quando ci sono stati i referendum fake a Donetsk, in Crimea, nel Lugansk, c'era anche insomma qualche osservatore della Lega, di Forza Italia.
Attuali consiglieri regionali della Lega sono andati anche in Crimea a festeggiare la indipendenza della Crimea dall'Ucraina. Quindi...
Okay, I think we can wrap up because I don't want to abuse the patience and the time of my dear friend Giorgi. February, it's close for Erasmus Plus deadline. It's time to involve third country again as the dear old time. So for sure we are going to see each other, and I hope like to rewire from 2018 in Ukraine was a great time. And also I made a great let's say advertisement of Georgian cuisine with Carlo, and this I really miss. So why not? We have to rewire a lot of things. Giorgi, you want to say something to people that watch this content?
So, firstly, thank you very much for all your kind words and intentions giving this time. It's very important, and I've always tried to advocate and use all the possible ways. Yeah, 2 weeks ago, I was in Council of Europe advocating for the similar situations and how we can support youth participation in civic and political life, and about situation with Georgia. Today with podcast, another day will be with statements, with international conferences, or supporting the grassroots initiatives in Georgia, or supporting the activists. And one of the main difference, what would be usually things that how you understand that you are on the correct right side, that people, despite of everything, that they still stand solidarity with you. Yeah, and so many people who is the what I was saying in Georgia, the protests are mostly those people who can build any good life in any European countries, but they still protest there and defend. That's why that we need to have this European life in Georgia. So that's why the people are protesting there for over 300 days and always defend the truth, stay for the side of justice, democracy, and truth and solidarity, because solidarity definitely matters. It makes a change and it inspires 1,000 people. We hear the many stories of good words of how inspiring is the Georgian people fight for European. At the same time, it's so much inspiring to see that support of the people, individuals, and so many youth organizations from Italy and across the Europe is supporting Georgia. But at the same time, important that it should be kind of into translated, let's say, that converted into the politics as well. Yeah, and politics should be kind of responding to the needs on the European level, responding to the needs and support all the people. Always advocate, and let's say that solidarities together we can definitely make a change, and we are looking very much for more opportunities, more cooperation, and reviving democracy not only in Georgia, but let's make it happen to live in a better European world, which we all want to see.
Absolutely. Carlo, chiudiamo, let's close with a great optimistic and really inspirational note.
Ma sostanzialmente qui Giorgi ringrazio per l'opportunità, si augura naturalmente che manterremo, possiamo dire, un'attenzione molto alta riguardo quelli che sono i temi del suo paese, si augura che lo spirito europeo possa prevalere e sostanzialmente quindi che quello che è i valori dell'Unione Europea possano avere la meglio grazie al nostro attivismo e quindi anche che in Georgia la situazione possa migliorare e appunto sottolineava anche il fatto che grazie a questi scambi culturali, a queste attività di associazioni come Erasmus Plus si possono anche fare degli incontri, no? Potenzialmente anche tra tutti noi tre o chi volesse partecipare. E quindi diciamo, come dire, ha un po' di ottimismo riguardo questo, che grazie anche a varie attività possa prevalere lo spirito europeo.
Beh, alla fine, se vogliamo fare una live su Erasmus Plus, potrebbe anche essere una cosa buona. Anyway, thank you so much, Giorgi. It was really inspiring. And whenever you want, wherever you, your friends, and Georgian Democrats want to do something with us, just knock in the door. It's always room for you guys. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think we can bake together Georgian khachapuri and Italian pizza. Could be a very good combination always.
Yes, I talk about khachapuri and khinkali for last week.
Even those can be good friendship starts. Yes, and yes, forza Italy, forza Georgia, grazie. So thank you very much and all the best, and see you soon around.
Thank you, my friend. Of course.
Bye.
Bye.